Hey guys, in this book to screen I'm going to be talking about the web series The Autobiography of Jane Eyre, starring Allison Hall and Adam Wright. The Autobiography of Jane Eyre is a 95-episode web series that is based off of Charlotte Bronte's Jane Eyre. If you don't know what Jane Eyre itself is about, it is about a young woman named Jane Eyre who goes out for a governess position and she meets Mr. Rochester. And Mr. Rochester has a daughter named Adele who she is sent to tutor. Jane Eyre is not only a romance, but it's also a gothic mystery. So, my thoughts on the Autobiography of Jane Eyre. If you have not seen the series, I suggest you don't watch this video because I think I am going to have quite a few spoilers in this. Overall, I did quite enjoy this web series. I do think it had some problems on occasion, but overall I do think it was, for the most part, well done. And I really liked how they took Jane Eyre and adapted it to a modern day setting. I think that is in particular what they did very well. If you are a fan of something like the Lizzie Bennet Diaries or Emma Approved, I do think you will highly enjoy this series, but don't go into it expecting that really high quality of video and sound footage that those other two web series have. That's really kind of my only complaints about this web series, is kind of the overall quality. I believe it's very fan heavy produced, meaning I think this is just a bunch of fans who put this together with their own resources, their own money. It's not like totally in this beautiful like HD, and sometimes you can't really hear that well on occasion. I found myself turning up the volume on quite a few episodes trying to hear, and sometimes even then I couldn't hear. And then I would have it up so high and then someone would get right up on the camera and my ears would about blow out. But if you're a stickler for high quality web series, then you might be kind of a little aggravated with this series. But then, yeah, if you don't mind the lower quality and the strange audio on occasion, then you'll probably really like this. It's the story that matters. I really like how the series is set up. You're immediately introduced to Jane, you immediately learn things about her, and the story pretty much kicks right off, and she heads out to work for Mr. Rochester. The thing about Jane in this adaptation is the fact that I think she is very relatable. I think anyone kind of in that age range is going to relate to Jane in some fashion. I really liked a lot of the different sort of risks, if you want to call it, that this adaptation took. Compared to something like the Lizzie Bennet Diaries, that show was constantly, kind of in one location. It would stay in that location for a span of time, but then would move to another location and that would be there for a span of time. But it was all just very there, how you're seeing me right now. That's all you ever got. And so what I loved about this adaptation of Jane Eyre is that they often kind of moved away from this one perspective of just the camera like this. And there was a lot of stuff outdoors, which I really enjoyed, and it kind of just brought more depth to the story and some more interesting factors. For instance, there was episode 8 called The Duck Pond, and Jane just took her camera outdoors and showed all this beautiful scenery. And I really liked that because, for one thing, not only did it get away from this perspective, but it went out and showed all this beauty. And in some ways, I think that kind of narrated the beautiful descriptive writing of Charlotte Bronte's original work. Because in Jane Eyre, it's not all about Jane and Rochester and all the other numerous characters. A lot of times it is often about the scenery and the symbolism of the scenery. And one thing that I particularly really appreciated about this series is that Rochester pops up into the story relatively quickly, compared to something like the Lizzie Bennet Diaries, where the lead male, Mr. Darcy, didn't pop up until a good portion of a way into the series. So in this adaptation of Jane Eyre, Rochester pops up by episode 13, which was really awesome. I really liked how the Jane and Rochester relationship was developed throughout these kind of early episodes. It was really vital that they got it right. I like that they don't initially get along, you know, in any adaptation they just don't get along at first. It takes a little while for them to kind of get warm up to each other and get used to each other. But then you start seeing that chemistry come through and it just all kind of builds up. Allison Hall and Adam Wright were just really great with each other, really easygoing, and I think they instantly kind of clicked together, and that was really visible to see. I ship them hard, you guys. Any adaptation, I usually ship Jane and Rochester. One of my favorite Jane and Rochester episodes was episode 43, called Kidnapped. It's one of the most sweet and adorable episodes of the whole web series. It's basically Jane and Rochester out doing normal activities. They go out shopping, they go to a beach, they play some silly games. It's basically them kind of out of the house, being themselves and really connecting. Because if you've read the book, you know that this fun, happy episode is not going to last much longer. Because that's when episodes 55 and 56 hit, and you learn what Rochester's secret is, and the whole Rochester and Jane relationship just crumbles out. When this web series started, I was particularly interested in how they would go about doing the whole Rochester and Bertha story, because the way it is in the book, it kind of makes sense, and the way it goes is just something how it would have been in that century and how the situation would have been handled. The thing is, this isn't the 19th century, this is a modern day adaptation, so there were things that I knew obviously had to be changed because it couldn't be portrayed in the same manner that it was in the book. I really liked how this adaptation dealt with the issue of mental illness and Rochester's treatment of his wife. I think the whole issue was so well developed, well written, well acted. And the great thing about episode 56, which is I think basically the last time we even see Rochester, it was about 27 minutes long, and it's just Rochester pouring his heart out, telling his entire story. And when I first saw this up on my inbox page that it was like 27 minutes, I was like, oh my god, I'm not going to be able to sit through this. But I was able to sit through all 27 minutes and I was glued to the screen. So then the web series moves away from the whole Rochester story. And it gets to the part of the novel where most readers, they either love this section of the novel or they hate it. So at episode 59, you are introduced to the Rivers siblings, Mary, Diana, and Simon. And Simon, I liked that they changed his name because St. John would not have gone very well in this adaptation, I don't think. I'm still to this day surprised that's how St. John's name is pronounced. When I was reading the book for the first time, I called him St. John. And then to my shock, when my professor started talking about St. John, and she was like, St. John did this, and I was like, St. John, what the hell? So it's probably a good thing they changed his name to Simon in this, because it made much more sense. In most adaptations, I do really like St. John and his sisters, and I did really enjoy them in this. I particularly really liked Simon. They have Simon kind of as this weirdo, and he's very orderly and meticulous, and he kind of doesn't really have a sense of humor, and he takes things too seriously. And he totally clashes with Jane, but you learn later that he has a crush on Jane, which kind of, now that I think about it, didn't really go nowhere. It kind of ended very abruptly. I really loved Mary and Diana. They were so fantastic, and they worked so well with Jane, and I liked how that story developed. It was much more interesting than in the book, I would say. In the book, the Rivers section can kind of get a little boring, and it did get a little boring on this, because there was a lot of episodes I just didn't really care, and a lot of it felt like filler trying to lead back up to all the events going on with Rochester and Rochester's injuries. in a lot of these random episodes, you would get some really great character moments, and you would see these relationships amongst these four characters really develop in interesting ways. Jane apparently has to have some really cute scenes with all the hot men on the show, because, like I said earlier, there was that really cute episode with Jane and Rochester shopping. There's another episode, episode 79, where Jane and Simon go out pepper shopping. Simon's about to move to India, and he wants to check his palate and see what kind of spices he can handle, and so Jane's pulling out all these different spices and testing them, and I really loved this episode. It was so adorable, and once again it got away from this visual with the camera and moved out of this frame. I was fully expecting this web series to go up to 100 episodes, just like the Lizzie Bennet Diaries did, and I was really shocked when all of a sudden it just stopped at 95 episodes. Let me put it this way, I really liked the finale. It was very fitting, very poetic. It kind of wrapped up Jane as a person and all the things she went through and how she herself changed. But here's the thing. I love Jane and Rochester. We learn about Rochester kind of through this third-person perspective. Jane just gets a call saying, oh, Rochester's been injured, this and that. The thing is, we never see Rochester again. We only see him from behind at one part when Jane visits him in the hospital. And then you kind of maybe see his hands on occasion doing things, but we never visibly see his face, and we never visibly see them have a conversation or hear their conversation. And so when episode 95 happened and I realized it was the final episode, it kind of clicked in me like, hey, this doesn't seem right. What happened to Rochester? What happened to that story? And I was looking down in the comments, and you know how the comments are down on YouTube, and people just gossiping away, and I kind of learned that the actor who was playing Rochester apparently kind of dropped out of the show for creative differences. I'm not quite positive what all that was about, if that is in fact even true. And so I think that is why the ending felt so abrupt. Even though it was a perfect ending, I think it would have had an even bigger impact had we gotten some more and better Rochester scenes. If I had to compare this web series to other web series, I honestly don't think I enjoyed it as much as the Lizzie Bennet Diaries. I think the Lizzie Bennet Diaries had a much better kind of cohesive flow and movement, and even better character development in some ways. But I do think I liked Autobiography of Jane Eyre better than Emma Improved. I'm not really liking Emma Approved at the moment. It's kind of slow and a little monotonous and boring to me, but I do think I liked Autobiography of Jane Eyre a heck of a lot more than that. But yeah, overall, I really did enjoy this web series. It was fun. I can't believe it's already over. And I think it was a really fantastic adaptation of the book. I really liked how they changed certain aspects. I liked how they modernized things. I like how they talked about a lot of those really deep, important issues in the book, like religion and mental illness. And most importantly, I really loved these characters. The characters of Jane Eyre are what make the book so special, and I love all those individual relationships amongst them all. So yeah, if you are a huge fan of Jane Eyre, I highly recommend this web series. So have you guys seen the Autobiography of Jane Eyre? I'd really love to hear your opinions and the things that you loved and didn't love. So that's it for This Book to Screen. I hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you liked this book to screen, you may like these other book to screens. Bye guys.